Hello, my name is Erin Oakton, and this is my presentation from a proposed research study on teen participation in young adult library services. This field of study is very important, as teens are the age group that bridges the children's and adult sections in the library, and are the group that needs to be engaged in order to keep child library users as users when they become adults. If we drop children when they reach their teenage years, then why would they return to the library when they are older? Unfortunately, there is a consensus that there is a lack of scholarly research in young adult librarianship. There has been a general note that there is a distinct difference in the amount of care that goes into young adult services in many libraries, but without knowing why. Bernier's study explores youth depictions in media and stereotypes as being a cause. However, recent studies have shown that there may be a link between how libraries run the young adult department and teen participation. This is something that needs to be explored further to see if there is a correlation and what variables may be preventing teen participation in libraries. The purpose of this study is to explore young adult librarianship to discover how teen participation may affect the creation and maintenance of young adult services, and to see why libraries may or may not choose to seek teen participation. This study seeks to answer these research questions. Does active teen participation in design of young adult spaces, programs, and services affect how libraries serve teens? What affects a library's decision to seek out youth participation in the design, use, or implementation of young adult library services, spaces, and programs? Could it be budget, time, space, library staff and community interest, community perception of young adults, or others? And now to the literature review. While there are a number of articles written on young adult services in the United States, there appears to be a dearth of scholarly research articles on the subject, as nearly all that I could find were practitioner-written articles. Media consistently portrays young adults as a demographic and characterizes them as troubling and dangerous, causing teens to be excluded from public spaces as problematic, undesirable users. This reinforces the idea that teens need to be controlled and increases government regulations, and then libraries must present appeals for services and funding for young adults in this environment. Studies on outreach and marketing discuss platforms, outreach attempts, and how social media is used to promote young adult programs, materials, and services. Velasquez's study notes that outreach is sporadic at times and decreases in certain months. In a study on young adult librarians, Coe and Abbas state that the main competencies young adult librarians should have are technology, teaching, programming, learning, community advocacy and partnerships, flexibility, adaptability, understanding diverse users, management, communication skills, curiosity, creativity, patience, and subject content knowledge and skills. However, they found that some of the more importantly ranked competencies were also ranked as ones that librarians did not possess, and in Velasquez's study, only 40% of her respondents were young adult specialist librarians. For studies on young adult library use, the studies indicate that young adults mainly go to libraries for personal pleasure or information searching, school-related activities, and to use the internet. Also, despite claims that the internet would decrease library use, Delia, Abbas, Bishop, Jacobs, and Roger found that internet access at home was not a factor in young adults using libraries. And then the majority of the discussion on young adult spaces has been on how young adult spaces in the past have created what Bernier refers to as a geography of no, where teens are told what they cannot do in the library and are forced into acting according to rigid definitions of acceptable behavior. In studies with teens on what they want in their young adult library spaces, the most important aspects were comfortable furniture, leisure and socialization space, space for learning and information needs, and space for activities. The importance of making the teen space their own was also emphasized by Augusto, Bell, Bernier, and Coleman, both in helping to design the space and in making it clearly separate from both the children's and adult sections of the library. Young adult participation was an important part of the majority of the studies, even if it was not the main part. Augusto, Bell, Bernier, and Coleman state that while librarians and teens can agree on many things being important, teens focus more on what they can do in this space, while librarians focus on what they can acquire. Rhinesmith, Detman, Pearson, and Spence add that encouraging teens to participate in the creation of their own space gives them a voice in their community when they are often ignored. And higher levels of youth participation seem to lead to increased belief and improved services for teens and staff satisfaction. However, only 11% of the libraries reported high youth participation and 22% reported none in Bernier's study. To start the discussion on methodology, the operation definitions for the study are public libraries being an ALA member library that serves the general public and their community. Urban is cities with more than 50,000 residents. Rural is cities or towns with fewer than 5,000 residents. Suburban are communities that are situated between major urban cities. Young adults, teens, are any person ages 13 to 18 years old. Young adult collections are all materials in the library collection that are primarily rated or purchased for teens and are categorized for their age group. Young adult services are all library resources that are primarily created for and or used by teens, including spaces, collections, programs, technology, etc. Young adult spaces are all library spaces that are created for and are set aside for primary use by teens, which may be closed to other age groups during peak teen use hours. Young adult library users are any teen who uses their local public library. And teen participation is any time one or more teens are directly involved in the creation, design, or operation of a library's young adult services. Public libraries are the study population for the study, and the sampling plan is used stratified random sampling of libraries that are nationwide with an equal distribution between rural, suburban, and urban, and small, medium, and large libraries. Current variables include the size of the public libraries and their location. For the data collection plan, the study will use online surveys sent out nationwide to public libraries in the United States. The survey will cover general information about the libraries, their practices with young adult services, and perceptions of teens in the library, and ask questions about teen participation in the library. One of the key strengths of survey research is that it allows the researcher to make general inferences about the study population and allow the study of populations across a wide geographic range, both necessary traits for this study. In terms of the data being studied, surveys are also a good method to use to explore and analyze relationships between variables or personal opinions. Survey research is limited and that is not capable of proving causal relationships, as survey research provides less control of the research environment. For this reason, this research will not be able to provide definitive answers as to how much youth participation affects libraries' young adult services. Since this study seeks to explore these possible relationships but not confirm them, and it needs a large sample size, the survey method's strengths are needed and make it an appropriate method to use for this study. Data analysis will be completed by coding the responses for more common meanings and creating keywords to count for average occurrence of variables, and then use qualitative software to measure possible correlations between these occurrences and variables in the study. There are a few ethical considerations for this study. As libraries themselves are unable to answer questions for surveys and interviews, the study will need to have young adult librarians participate on behalf of their library. As such, there are ethical concerns related to having human participants in the study. This requires informed consent from all participants and consideration taken to prevent harm by making sure responses are kept anonymous. The main limitations for this study regard the fact that survey studies are unable to prove causation. Further limitations come from the common lack of responses to surveys, meaning that the sample might not be large enough to prove a hypothesis anyways. This study aims to provide a foundation for research in teen participation in young adult services to see if there are any practices that increase the use or quality of young adult services in libraries. As such, the data from this study would then be used in future research to test possible hypotheses that can be gathered from the end of the study, so that libraries can use this information to create research-proven best practices for young adult services in public libraries. In conclusion, this research study aims to fill a gap that exists in the current research in the field of young adult librarianship. Possible correlations discovered from this study will hopefully start a dialogue that will lead to further research in the field and will maybe determine best practices to improve young adult services in libraries.